She believed the hardest part would be signing her name. She was wrong. The mistake wasn't divorcing him. It was believing he would let her go. Her hand trembled as the pen hovered above the paper, the ink tip shaking just enough to betray the lie she kept telling herself, that this was freedom. That once the papers were signed, the weight on her chest would finally lift. It didn't. Instead, the room felt smaller, tighter, as if the walls themselves were leaning in, waiting. Before we go any further, take 1 second. If you're new here, subscribe now, because stories like this don't get safer as they go on. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Because what happens next proves this kind of mistake doesn't belong to one place. The Christmas tree glowed behind her, soft golden lights blinking innocently, cruelly out of place for what this moment truly was. Laughter floated faintly from another room. Glasses clinked. Someone cheered. A party continued somewhere nearby, unaware that something irreversible was happening at this table. She swallowed hard. Her name looked unfamiliar on the page, like it belonged to someone else. And then she felt him. Not a touch. Not a word. Just presence. Close enough that the warmth of his body pressed into the space behind her shoulder. Close enough that her breath hitched without permission. Close enough that she knew, without turning around, that he was watching every movement of her hand. Slowly. Carefully. As if this was not an ending, but a confirmation. A tear slid down her cheek and landed on the paper, blurring a letter. She wiped it away quickly, embarrassed by her own weakness, and forced herself to keep writing. She didn't look at him. She couldn't. Because some instincts are older than thought. And every one of hers was screaming that if she met his eyes right now, something inside her would break for good. The pen scratched across the paper. Signature complete. For a brief, fragile second, she thought it was over. Then his hand settled on the table beside hers. Not slammed. Not aggressive. Just firm. Claiming space. Claiming certainty. Her fingers froze. The room went silent, not because the music stopped, but because her body stopped listening to anything else. He leaned in slightly, his voice low enough that only she could hear it. "Careful," he said calmly. "Don't smudge it." That was all. No anger. No pleading. No threats. And that was what terrified her. Because anger fades. Begging ends. But this sounded final. She nodded faintly, unsure why she felt the need to obey, and pulled her hand back. The paper lay between them now. Signed. Official. Irrevocable. She exhaled shakily, expecting something. A reaction. A crack. A flicker of emotion. There was none. He straightened, his expression composed, almost distant, as if he had just witnessed a routine transaction instead of the collapse of a marriage. "You should enjoy the party," he said, stepping back. "It's Christmas." Then he walked away. Just like that. No scene. No argument. No last look. People nearby smiled politely as he passed, unaware of the shift in the air, unaware that something dangerous had just been set into motion. She remained seated long after he disappeared into the crowd. Her chest burned. Not with relief. With dread. Because endings are loud when they're real. They hurt. They fight back. This one didn't. And that silence felt wrong. If you're watching this right now, pause for a moment and tell me, where are you watching from? Because stories like this don't belong to one place. They follow people everywhere. She finally stood, smoothing her dress, forcing a smile onto her face as someone approached to congratulate her on being brave and choosing herself. She nodded. She thanked them. She played the role. But inside, something cold had begun to spread. Because as the night wore on, she noticed things she hadn't before. The way people stepped aside when he moved through the room. The way conversations lowered around him. The way no one ever touched him first. And the way, no matter where she stood, she could feel his attention like a weight between her shoulder blades. She left early. The air outside was sharp, biting, cutting through the thin fabric of her coat. She welcomed the pain. It grounded her. Her phone buzzed as she unlocked her car. A message. No name. No number. Just 6 words. "You should have asked first." Her stomach dropped. She stared at the screen, heart pounding, fingers numb. Asked who? Asked what? She typed back, then erased it. Typed again. Deleted. The phone buzzed once more. This city remembers. She slid into the driver's seat, hands shaking so badly she had to sit there for a full minute before she could even turn the key. That was the first moment she realized something she had never truly considered during the years she spent beside him. She didn't actually know who her husband was. And if this story already has you leaning closer to the screen, now is the moment to do something simple: subscribe. Because this isn't a love story. And it isn't over. What happens next is the part people never talk about, the part after you walk away believing you're free. Tell me this in the comments. If you were her, would you have signed? And as she drove into the night, Christmas lights blurring past her windshield, one truth settled deep in her bones. She had ended the marriage. But something far more dangerous had just begun. She didn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt that hand on the table again. Not heavy. Not violent. Certain. Morning arrived quietly, as if nothing had happened. Sunlight crept through the curtains. Cars passed outside. The world moved on. She didn't. Her phone lay on the nightstand, face down, like it might bite if she touched it. She told herself she was being paranoid. That people said dramatic things when emotions ran high. That not every silence carried a threat. Still, she didn't turn it over. In the bathroom mirror, her face looked unfamiliar. Pale. Drawn. Older than it had been 2 days ago. She splashed water on her cheeks and whispered, "It's over," like a spell she hoped would work if she repeated it enough times. The words didn't stick. At noon, she drove to the cafe she used to love. Same corner table. Same window view. Same order. Different feeling. She sensed it before she saw it, the way conversations dipped, the way the air shifted slightly. Then the chair across from her slid back. A man sat down. Not her husband. She stiffened anyway. He smiled politely. Too politely. "You're early," he said. "I'm waiting for someone," she replied, even though she wasn't. "Of course you are." He placed his phone on the table. The screen lit up. A photo. Her car. Parked outside her apartment. Taken less than an hour ago. She felt the blood drain from her face. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," she said carefully. The man chuckled. "That's what everyone says at first." He leaned back, crossing his legs. Relaxed. Comfortable. Like he belonged there. "He wanted me to tell you something," the man continued. "He said to remind you. Endings are a luxury." Her chest tightened. "Who is he?" The man's smile faded, just slightly. "You know who." He stood, adjusting his jacket. "Enjoy your coffee. It's a nice place." He always liked it for meetings. Meetings. That word followed her all the way home. By evening, the city felt hostile. Every passing car lingered too long. Every stranger's glance felt deliberate. When she reached her apartment building, she paused before entering, scanning the street like someone who had learned too late what fear really was. Inside, everything looked the same. Except for the envelope on her kitchen counter. No stamp. No name. Just waiting. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. A date. A time. An address. And one sentence at the bottom. "Come alone." Her pulse roared in her ears. "If you're still watching right now, I need to ask you something, would you go? Because this is where most people think bravery looks like obedience. And most people are wrong." She sat at the table for a long time, staring at that address, replaying every moment of her marriage in her head. Every late night. Every unexplained absence. Every time she had chosen silence over questions. She had believed love required patience. She was starting to understand what it had actually required was blindness. The address led her to a building she had passed 100 times without noticing. No sign. No lights. Just a door that looked like it hadn't been opened in years. She knocked. Nothing. She knocked again. The door opened slowly. Inside, the room was empty except for one chair and him. Her husband. He looked exactly the same. Calm. Composed. Untouched by whatever storm was tearing through her. "You came," he said, as if she'd arrived for dinner. "You sent someone to scare me," she said, her voice trembling despite her effort to control it. "I sent someone to inform you," he corrected. "There's a difference." Her nails dug into her palms. "What do you want?" He studied her for a moment. Not with anger. Not with longing. With assessment. "I want you to understand something," he said quietly. "Yesterday, you signed a document. Today, you signed a decision." She shook her head. "I'm done." "You said it yourself." "I said it was Christmas," he replied. "Not that it was over." He stepped closer. "Not touching her. Never touching her. That life you think you walked away from," he continued, "doesn't forget faces. Or names. Or choices." She backed away until the chair pressed into the backs of her knees. "You could have asked," he said. "You didn't." And in that moment, the truth finally surfaced, not as a revelation, but as a confirmation. He had never been hiding from her. She had been hiding from reality. If this story has you holding your breath right now, subscribe. Because from here on, every decision costs more than the last. Tell me in the comments, would you have walked into that room, or run? He turned toward the door, stopping just before he reached it. "You wanted freedom," he said over his shoulder. "Now you get to see what it costs." Then he left her alone in that room. Alone with the knowledge that the marriage was over. But the consequences were just beginning. Before we continue, pause for 1 second. If you're still here, you're already invested. Subscribe now, because this is the point where stories like this stop being about choices and start being about consequences. And tell me in the comments, are you watching this alone, or with someone beside you? Keep that answer in mind as this unfolds. She didn't leave the building right away. Her legs felt weak, as if the floor itself had shifted under her. The chair scraped softly as she steadied herself, the sound echoing louder than it should have in the empty room. He hadn't touched her. He hadn't raised his voice. And yet, she felt more trapped than she ever had during their entire marriage. Outside, the city hummed with life. People walked. Cars passed. Somewhere, someone laughed. Normalcy carried on without her. By the time she got home, the sky had darkened. She locked the door behind her, then checked it again. And again. Her phone buzzed twice in her hand, and she flinched before realizing it was just a notification from an app she barely used anymore. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing. What had she signed herself into? The next morning, her bank card declined at the grocery store. She laughed nervously at first, apologizing to the cashier, insisting it must be a mistake. She tried again. Declined. Her phone buzzed. A message. No shared accounts anymore, it read. You wanted separation. Her stomach dropped. By noon, she realized it wasn't just money. Her access badge at work didn't scan. The security guard frowned apologetically and told her to wait while he made a call. She stood there, heat rising to her face as people passed, pretending not to stare. After 10 minutes, he returned the badge. There's been a change, he said carefully. You'll need to speak to management. Management never showed. By evening, it became impossible to deny what was happening. The life she had built, piece by piece, year by year, was quietly being dismantled. No confrontation. No threats. No spectacle. Just removal. That was when she understood the true shape of his power. It wasn't loud. It didn't chase. It erased. She called him for the first time since signing the papers. It rang once. He answered. Yes, he said, as if he had been expecting it. You're doing this, she said, not bothering to hide the accusation. I'm letting things return to their natural order, he replied. Her voice cracked. This isn't fair. There was a pause. Then, softly, neither was leaving without understanding who you were leaving. She swallowed. What do you want from me? Another pause. Longer this time. I want you to see, he said. Then you can decide. Decide what? Before she could ask, the line went dead. That night, someone knocked on her door. She didn't open it. The knock came again. Slow. Patient. When she finally looked through the peephole, no one was there. Only a small box on the floor. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. Inside was her wedding ring. And a note. You forgot this. She sank onto the floor, breath coming in shallow gasps. Because the message wasn't sentimental. It was precise. He hadn't returned it because it mattered. He returned it because he wanted her to remember who had given it to her in the first place. If you're watching this right now, ask yourself what would scare you more, being chased, or being calmly undone. She stopped trying to fight it after that. Stopped resisting. Stopped pretending she could outwait him. Instead, she did the one thing she hadn't done in years. She started asking questions. About his business trips. About the people who used to call late at night. About the stories that never quite added up. And every answer pointed to the same conclusion. The man she married wasn't hiding a secret life. He was living it openly. She had just never been invited inside. One evening, as she stood by her window watching the city lights flicker on, her phone buzzed again. A single message. Tomorrow. No address. No time. Just certainty. She exhaled slowly. Because now, she understood something that changed everything. The divorce hadn't freed her. It had summoned her. And tomorrow, she would finally learn what that meant. Before we continue, pause for a moment. If you're still here, subscribe now because this story is no longer about curiosity. It's about endurance. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from, because what unfolds next proves that power travels farther than borders. She didn't ask where. She didn't ask when. Because the message didn't feel like an invitation. It felt like a summons. The car arrived just before sunset. Black. Unmarked. Silent. It waited outside her building without urgency, without signals, certain she would come down on her own. And she did. As the city slid past the windows, something inside her shifted. Streets she once knew blurred into routes she had never needed to understand. The driver never spoke. The silence wasn't awkward. It was practiced. When the car finally stopped, she felt it immediately. This place didn't explain itself. The building was unremarkable, intentionally so. No guards in sight. No cameras obvious enough to warn her. Nothing that announced importance. Inside, the air felt different. Controlled. Measured. People moved with purpose but without haste. They didn't stare at her, not because she was invisible, but because she had already been acknowledged. He appeared without ceremony. Not greeting her. Not guiding her. Just walking, knowing she would follow. They entered a room high above the city. Glass walls. Muted lighting. A table set for two. He gestured for her to sit. She did. This, he said calmly, is what you wanted to understand. She looked around slowly. Is this your world? He poured tea, hands steady. Part of it. The answer was deliberate. Incomplete. How long? She asked. Longer than you think. She waited. The silence didn't bother him. So why bring me here? She pressed. He finally looked at her then, not with anger, not with regret, but with evaluation. Because walking away doesn't erase proximity, he said. It only changes leverage. Her throat tightened. You're punishing me. No, he replied. I'm clarifying reality. He slid a folder across the table. Inside were names she recognized, people she'd met, places she'd been, events she thought were coincidences. Accounts. Structures. Timelines that overlapped her life in ways that made her stomach drop. You can leave, he said evenly. Disappear. Start again. I'll ensure no one interferes. Her pulse spiked. And the cost? He didn't answer immediately. That depends, he said finally, on how much you're willing to forget. She closed the folder slowly. And if I don't? She asked. Then you stay close enough to understand, he said. But far enough to never control. She stood. He didn't stop her. Outside, the city looked unchanged, and that unsettled her more than anything else. No alarms. No pursuit. No consequence. Not yet. Her phone buzzed as she reached the corner. A message. Tomorrow you'll be introduced. Introduced to what? She typed back once. To whom? The reply came instantly. To the version of me you were never meant to see. Her hand lowered. Because suddenly, the divorce made sense. It wasn't an escape. It was a trigger. And somewhere in the city behind her, a door had opened that didn't close quietly. Not to danger, but to something far more permanent. Before we go further, if you're still here, subscribe now. This is the point where watching turns into commitment. And tell me in the comments, are you watching this late at night or during the day? Because what she's about to face is the kind of thing that feels different after dark. She didn't reply to the message. She didn't need to. The following morning, her phone rang at exactly 9. No number. No ringtone she recognized. She answered anyway. Be ready in 30 minutes, a woman's voice said. Calm. Professional. Final. The call ended. There was no room for questions. There never was. When the car arrived, it wasn't the same one from the night before. This one was lighter. Cleaner. Almost ordinary. That unsettled her more than the black sedan ever had. They drove her across the city, past places she knew well enough to recognize when they turned off the familiar routes. The buildings changed. So did the rhythm of the streets. She was taken into an office that looked like it belonged to a consulting firm. Glass walls. Neutral colors. Minimal decor. The kind of place you wouldn't remember twice. For people were already inside. They stood when she entered, not out of respect, but acknowledgement. This wasn't a meeting. It was an evaluation. The woman from the phone call sat at the head of the table. Sharp eyes. Controlled posture. Not an ounce of wasted movement. You've been introduced, the woman said. Now you'll be oriented. I didn't agree to anything, she replied. The woman nodded. That's correct. A man beside her slid a tablet across the table. On the screen was her name. Beneath it, a timeline. Events from her life mapped out with disturbing accuracy. This is your exposure, the woman continued. What you know. What you've seen. Who you've interacted with. What you can plausibly deny. She stared at the screen. Why are you showing me this? Because ignorance is no longer an option, the woman said. And fear is inefficient. Another man spoke up. You are not here because you were married to him. You're here because you survived leaving him. That word again. Survived. You have 3 paths, the woman said. You walk away and forget. You stay adjacent and remain protected. Or you step inside and become useful. Her pulse thudded in her ears. Useful how? The woman finally smiled. Just barely. That depends on what you're willing to trade. They explained it slowly. Methodically. As if discussing logistics instead of lives. Information moved through people like currency. Silence had value. Loyalty was measured, not assumed. And mistakes were corrected quietly. You won't be asked to hurt anyone, the woman said. At least not directly. That qualifier landed hard. What happens if I refuse? She asked. The woman folded her hands. Then we downgrade your proximity. Which means? It means you'll live, she replied. But everything around you will remain, conditional. She thought of the declined card. The lost badge. The empty apartment that suddenly felt temporary. She was already living conditionally. A folder was placed in front of her. Not thick. Not dramatic. Inside was a single name. A photo. A location. Go there tonight, the woman said. Listen. Observe. Don't interfere. And then, she asked. Then you come back, the woman said. And tell us what you heard. Her stomach tightened. That's it. That's your first action, the woman replied. After that, we'll know what you are. If you're watching this and thinking there's still a safe answer, ask yourself, when was the last time safety was offered without a price? She left the building with the folder pressed against her side like it might burn through her coat. The location wasn't far. That was intentional. She arrived just before dusk. A restaurant. Quiet. Expensive. Discreet. The kind of place people chose when they didn't want to be overheard. She took a seat at the bar, heart pounding, eyes fixed on the mirror behind the shelves. 2 men entered minutes later. One of them, she recognized instantly. Her breath caught. He had been at their wedding. Smiling. Toasting. Applauding. She listened. And as the conversation unfolded, something inside her shifted permanently. They spoke about shipments. About timing. About a problem that needed to disappear. Not hypothetically. Specifically. Her hands curled into fists. She had thought proximity was the danger. She was wrong. Understanding was. When she returned home later that night, her phone buzzed. A single message. "Well done," it read. "Now you know why leaving was never simple." She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the wall. Because now, she understood the real trap. She wasn't being forced inside. She was being invited to stay because she already couldn't pretend she didn't see. And once you see this much, you don't get to be innocent again. Before we go any further, subscribe now. Because this is the stretch where people think they can still stop watching, and then realize they can't. And tell me in the comments, are you watching this on your phone or a TV? Keep that in mind as the space around her starts to close. She didn't sleep again. Not because of fear had already settled in, but because her mind wouldn't stop rearranging what she had heard. The words at the restaurant replayed with surgical clarity. Names. Times. Corrections discussed as calmly as dessert. By morning, the city looked staged. Like a set built to convince her everything was normal. It wasn't. Her phone rang once. This time, it was him. "You did well," he said. She didn't answer. "You're wondering if that was a test," he continued. "It wasn't. Tests have right answers." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Then what was it?" "An introduction," he said. "To consequence." The line went dead. An hour later, a new message arrived: an address, a time, and a single instruction. Dress plainly. The building was smaller this time. Older. The kind of place that survived by being overlooked. Inside, a narrow hallway led to a room with no windows and a table bolted to the floor. 3 people waited. One she recognized from the office. One she didn't. And one who made her stop short. He stood when she entered. The man from the restaurant. The one from the wedding. He didn't smile now. "This isn't what it looks like," he said quickly. She said nothing. The woman from the office spoke. "You observed. Now you'll confirm." "Confirm what?" she asked. "That you understand what silence protects," the woman replied. The man began to speak, fast, desperate, explaining context, minimizing intent, offering information in exchange for relief. She listened. And with every word, the room made more sense. When he finished, the woman turned to her. "Tell me what you heard." Her chest tightened. This wasn't about accuracy. It was about alignment. She could repeat the words. Or she could repeat the meaning. She chose carefully. "I heard a delay," she said. "A correction that hasn't been finalized." The woman studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded. "That will be enough." The man exhaled sharply, relief flooding his face. It lasted 3 seconds. The woman closed the folder. "Escort him," she said to the other man. The door opened. The man from the wedding looked at her once more, confused, searching, then he was gone. She didn't ask where. That was the moment something in her went quiet. Not guilt. Not shock. Resistance. Outside, her phone buzzed. "You see how it works now," the message read. She typed back before she could stop herself. "You said I wouldn't have to hurt anyone." The reply came almost instantly. "I said not directly." Her hands trembled. If you're still watching, ask yourself this: where exactly does responsibility begin? That night, she stood at her window again, city lights stretching endlessly, each one a decision someone else had already made. She realized the danger hadn't been marrying him. It had been believing she could leave without inheriting what he left behind. Her phone buzzed one last time. "Tomorrow," the message read. "You'll choose your position." She didn't ask what that meant. She already knew. Because by now, Neutrality wasn't an option. It was a liability. Before we finish, subscribe now. If you've made it this far, you're not just watching anymore. You're inside it. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from, because the final choice in this story proves power doesn't care about borders. The car arrived before dawn. No message this time. No warning. She was already dressed. They didn't blindfold her. They didn't rush her. They didn't need to. By now, she understood the rhythm. Resistance had been replaced with awareness, and awareness had become obedience's quieter cousin. The building stood alone at the edge of the city, unfinished, unmarked, intentionally incomplete. Inside, the air was cooler. Still. As if nothing loud had ever happened there, and nothing ever would. He was waiting. Not standing. Not pacing. Seated. As if this meeting had always been scheduled. "You came," he said. "I always do," she replied. And the truth of that startled her. He gestured to the chair across from him. She Saturday. On the table between them lay a single folder. No names on the cover. No seals. Just wait. "This is where the story ends for most people," he said calmly. "They see what's inside. They panic. They make a choice they don't understand." She didn't open it. "What's my position?" she asked. A pause. Then, almost a smile. "You don't work for me," he said. "You never will." Her brow furrowed. "Then why am I here?" "Because proximity isn't the same as loyalty," he replied. "And loyalty isn't the same as usefulness." He slid the folder closer. "Open it." She did. Inside were plans. Routes. Names she now recognized without needing context. Not targets, structures. Systems. The spaces between decisions where outcomes were shaped before anyone noticed. "This isn't enforcement," she said slowly. "It's influence." "Yes," he said. "And influence requires someone who understands consequence, without needing to be convinced." She closed the folder. "You want me to stand where you can't," she said. "I want you to stand where I won't," he corrected. Visibility attracts attention. You've already learned how to disappear in plain sight. Silence settled between them. Outside, the city waited. Inside, everything had already been decided except one thing. "What happens if I walk away?" she asked. He didn't answer immediately. "Then, you'll be safe," he said. "But irrelevant." "And if I stay?" "Then you'll never be asked twice," he replied. Her chest tightened, not with fear, but with clarity. She thought of the declined card. The returned ring. The man from the wedding who never came back. The way the world had rearranged itself the moment she signed her name. This wasn't about marriage. It never had been. It was about alignment. If you're watching this right now, ask yourself what scares you more. Being controlled, or realizing you're capable of choosing control? She stood. He watched her, expression unreadable. She placed the folder back on the table, then slid it toward him. "I'll do it," she said. "But not like this." A flicker crossed his eyes. Interest. "You don't sit above me," she continued. "And I don't sit beneath you. You want influence. Then you let me decide where pressure belongs." The room felt smaller. Not tighter. Focused. He leaned back slightly, studying her as if for the first time. "You're asking for autonomy," he said. "I'm setting terms," she replied. A long silence. Then he nodded once. "Then we begin," he said. Her phone buzzed. A message. Not from him. Not from the woman. From an unknown number. "I know where you are." Her breath caught. He noticed. "What is it?" he asked. She looked at the screen again. Another message followed. "So do they." She lifted her gaze slowly. For the first time since the divorce, since the signatures, since the erasures and introductions, something shifted. The game wasn't ending. It was expanding. She slipped the phone back into her pocket and met his eyes. "We're not alone," she said. His calm didn't waver. "I know," he replied. "That's why I chose you. If this story stayed with you, subscribe. Because some endings aren't conclusions. They're invitations. And tell me in the comments. Did she step into power? Or just become visible to something even worse? Because whatever was watching had already made its move.